Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, along with my co-host, Ed Carbajal, and on a weekly basis, we plan to bring you the biggest news and interviews in the world of combat sports. Ed, how you doing, brother?
All right, sweating balls here in Jersey. How about yourself?
Same thing. It's hot. We got fires left and right out here, so it's
Oh, that's
definitely a
right.
little touch and go.
I actually showed my dad the picture of the fire you sent me from that big one, and I mean that's some like end of the world shit going on over there.
Yeah, I mean, luckily for me, I'm safe, but I definitely know people, and where I work is definitely getting closer and closer to danger zone. But for the most part, everybody will be pretty safe, and we're pretty prepared for it out here. We're used to it after year of fires.
I feel like I'd prefer that to the snow we get anyway. But so you had a better weekend than I did. With UFC 227, you were there for the press conference. You were there for the fights. So I gotta ask your opinion on that press conference on Friday. You made it there, you said, right?
Yeah, I grinded it out. It took me about 5.5 hour round trip for a hour and 15-minute weigh-in and press conference, but it was fun. It was kind of an intimate location. I had a decent seat in the place, so it was cool. It was kind of hoping Connor and Khabib would be there to kind of interject a little bit of energy into everything. But with Nate Diaz showing up late and kind of got the crowd going, it was fun. It was cool. It was cool to see all that much talent there.
So what was the energy like though? Like, cause me watching it, I watched it after the fact, and the actually, I mean, I liked a lot of the fights that were announced, but the way they threw in the Khabib and Connor at the end, I feel like overshadowed everything, and kind of like, outside of Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier, nobody really paid much mind to anything else. Like, what was the vibe for you at when you heard that announcement being there?
Well, the crowd was pretty much into it from the start. I think pretty much everybody expected Khabib and Connor to be announced. I think even John Morgan might have had the very first question, and he actually asked if there was going to be a video montage come on at the very end that was going to act as a surprise to everybody. So I think everybody kind of expected that. As it went on, people started to wonder. It was cool. My biggest issue was actually the MMA media, and I know we're kind of fringe that, but the people that are actually credentialed for UFC events, they weren't really prepared, in my opinion. Like I said, the press conference itself only lasted about 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah,
You know,
Skinny Jim seemed to be the only one that Jim Edwards from MMA Knit. He seemed to be him and John Morgan were the only ones that seemed prepared to be there. And then there was some other guy, but yeah, no, I agree with you there. I mean, they asked awesome questions. I thought about everything. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, people tried to say that it was like a one of those pay-per-views that wasn't going to do well. I don't know what the numbers did. But you were there. What was the vibe like? Fight night, like how was the energy on Saturday?
well, yeah. So the press conference Friday, and then they had the ceremonial weigh-ins, um, and then I headed back down on Saturday uh, around noontime to get down there for the fights. Uh, it was good. It wasn't the most loaded card. We talked about that before, where it was kind of a top-heavy card. Night started off well. Marlon Vera got a TKO win with a body shot, and I believe Alex Perez. I'm just kind of throwing everything off the top of my head, but he finished off Shorty Torres.
I
Really went.
actually I actually did catch that one. Yeah, man, that was hard to watch because I had drinks with I was drinking, he was talking. I met Jose Shorty Torres at that Fight Pass party for UFC 200 out in Vegas, and that's a great. I mean, he's a great fighter. He's really smart and intelligent. He's good. He's professional. So it was hard for me to watch, but apparently he likes to start slow. And Daniel Cormier was commenting. I don't know if you heard any of that, but he said, to be a slow starter at that level, it's something you need to get rid of. And I guess that showed it in that second fight.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was just Perez came out and I mean put on a performance. When somebody comes out fighting that well, You're gonna run into that at the UFC level, especially when you're on the undercard prelims and you're running into guys who are up and coming, and you never know who you're gonna run into.
Mm.
The guy on the Fight Pass prelim might be the world champion, 2 years, 3 years down the line. So I don't know if that's where Perez's career is headed, but he put up a great show against a guy who's held a lot of championships in other organizations, and I think he was on some kind of winning streak that was. I thought I heard him mention something about 36 or 34 fights. I think it probably goes back to his amateur career. But I saw his post on Instagram, and he took the loss well, and realizes that things like that happen. And if you run into, like I said, if you play this game long enough, you lose. So
Yeah.
I think he'll be back. Most of these guys, after a loss, either rebound and become stronger, and the other ones will fade away. But I don't think he's mentally weak in any way, so I think he'll be fine. Um, but yeah, I mean, after that, it kind of slowed down a little bit for the FX prelims. The Pedro Munoz Brett Johns fight finished those off, and that was a slugfest and back and forth battle. And Johns showed a lot of heart. He got beat up pretty damn good, but
I
you know,
actually
I,
still need to see that one. I have it queued up actually on my DVR. Um, but yeah, I heard and saw photos. I heard that was a slugfest.
yeah, that was one of the fights of the night for sure. I don't remember. I don't know exactly. I think it might have actually got the fight of the night. I didn't see the post fight.
I think Cejudo and Johnson got that. They both
Okay,
got the
they gave it to
50%.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, then maybe yeah, and then I think they gave Perez. Did they give Perez and Dillashaw the performance of the night or something like that? But anyways, yeah. So the main card, Kevin Holland, Thiago Santos kicked it off, and it was kind of what you expected. Santos dominated the fight, but Holland showed a lot.
Yeah.
I actually ran into him outside of the press conference in the weigh-ins the night before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was cool. He was taking pictures with all the fans, and I was shocked at how small he was. And then I noticed that I think he weighed in at like I mean he weighed in at weight, but I think his fight weight was only like 193.
Hmm.
So whereas Santos was like 213 or something like that. Santos put
Yeah.
on 25, 30 pounds almost more. And so I think Holland probably, depending on how his weight cut is and where he's at, he looked a lot more like a 170er to me.
Well, I mean,
I,
he did take the fight on 2 weeks' notice, but for somebody coming in on 2 weeks' notice, I mean, he won a lot of fans that night. I actually didn't like him either. I don't know if you read the. I wrote an article for my MMA news about it because Dana White wasn't a fan of him when he fought on the Contender Series because of him talking during the fight, and he did it when he fought Thiago Santos. But like you said, man, like he almost got that armbar early in the first round, and then he did that Kimura trap reversal at the close of round two. I mean, he did a lot of really cool things for somebody that lost a fight. A lot of people were impressed with him. And Dana White said it in the post-fight presser. I was tweeting about him on Twitter, and even Elias Theodoro said the same thing. Like, this guy lost, but he, like, in a weird way, he won. And Dana White even said they're going to try to help, like, fine tune him. Even though he lost the Contender Series, obviously they're going to call him back for another fight.
yeah, that's kind of the way I saw it too, and what I've been seeing on social media. So it was like I said, he got beat up pretty good. Lost every round, but he was game, and like you said, took the fight on late notice, and he was undersized. Like I said, I don't know if he's a true middleweight, but he definitely looked like a talented fighter who could make some waves down the line.
Oh yeah, yeah. He definitely had some nice tricks up his sleeve. Transitions he did off his back in that first round, and then again that reversal that even though he closed around on top, you could tell the short notice was definitely I think he said in between rounds to one of the referees, he said, I don't think I can see, or something like that, and he still stood up and finished the fight. So I mean, that's definitely stuff. Dana White admitted he likes seeing the short notice and just going all out. And obviously people are still talking about that fight. He mentioned it again on the Contender Series, actually, if you watched on Tuesday.
Yeah, I did. I overheard him mention throughout his name. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was a good fight. I was in the crowd. You're always pulling for finishes and stuff, but that one turned out to be a unanimous decision for Santos. That you asked earlier about the kind of the atmosphere there, and the crowd. In a Vegas arena, the crowd usually doesn't fill until the main card.
Uh-huh.
That was kind of the same situation here. There was a lot of traffic around the Staples Center. There was a Nike 3-on-3 basketball tournament going on, so there
Oh.
was probably another 25,000 people just kind of outside and all around the arena. So I think that might have, plus LA is a late arriving city in general for all their sports. But by the time the main card kicked off, it was a sellout. I mean, Staples Center is a big arena, and there wasn't an empty seat, so crowd really kind of got into it. Um, especially right into the Santos fight, and then they hit a slowdown. The ladies were next with JJ Aldrich and Pollyanna Vieira. That was actually a really disappointing fight. I think the crowd uh, kind of fell asleep a little bit during that one, and um, I think that's one where you kind of saw why they were initially prelim fighters, and JJ showed that she's a good fighter. Does not take anything away from either one of them, but I just don't think they're pay-per-view level fighters at this point in their career.
No, I think that was a last minute shuffle anyway, given everything that happened with the fights that they lost for that event. But the other thing was I wanted to ask you as far as the consensus, because I mean the fight was great. It was a split decision, but with the co-main event with Cejudo and Johnson, like what was the consensus in the arena of folks watching, like, or at least the people you were with, like, what did you think? Did you think who did you think won that fight? It seemed like it could have gone either way.
Well, yeah, it could have. The thing leading up to that fight actually was the fight before. I don't mean to jump back a second,
Uh-huh.
but the arena, like when Cub Swanson came out, him being from Southern California, the arena
Mm.
just lit up. Now things didn't work out, and Moicano finished him with a rear naked choke in the first round. But that after the female fight and a run of decisions, going into that fight, there was 6 decisions in a row. So you had Swanson come out. I mean, the crowd just woke up. I even posted that on the MMAcommunity.com that it was kind of a shot of adrenaline. The crowd, I mean, exploded for him. Cub's obviously a famous fighter,
Yeah.
but you don't put him on the level of guys like Chuck Liddell and stuff like that. But when he came out, the crowd was electric. Like I said, it didn't work out for him, but that was really what was needed to set up for the big 2 title fights. So when the Johnson and Cejudo fight kicked off, the crowd was awake live. People were chatting. Um, Mighty Mouse got a good reception from the crowd. Cejudo was a little bit less, but watching the fight, uh, I think I spoke about in the last show about how I attend so many shows and I've seen so many fighters. This was actually the first time I'd ever seen Mighty Mouse or Cejudo fight live, which is kind of, I mean, having been to 47 events, you would have thought that eventually I would have ended up catching one of them. So that was kind of a treat. And but I also spoke last time about how you want to see history. So for me, when the first round, when we cleared the 3-minute mark and Cejudo had already went beyond what he had done in the first fight, it looked like he had a smart game plan going. He was trying a couple takedowns here and there. I think he even secured one in round 1
Mm-hmm.
at the very end. You kind of picked up the emotion from the crowd was kind of like, okay, now we're in for one. This could be something that people are going to talk about. This is not going to be a typical Mighty Mouse fight where he just dominates. And the dominated fights, you kind of forget about the next day. It's the back and forth wars or the upsets that you know people remember forever. So as the rounds went on, after the second round, I posted on the forum that I had to ask some people how they were scoring it because it was really close. They were close rounds, and I found myself pulling for Henry, for that upset and kind of historical moment scenario unfolding. And most people had it like 1-1 going into the third. Um, and then if I recall, I believe Henry won I thought he won the third. Fourth was really close, but I think Mighty Mouse might have pulled the fourth out, and then the fifth round was close. So it was close. I think most of the crowd, I didn't think Mighty Mouse won the fight.
Mm.
Kind of watching it from a full fight pride scoring perspective from the crowd, because when you're there live, you kind of get into the emotion of stuff and you kind of lose track of the rounds if you're not actually doing round by round scoring. But it just seemed to me that Cejudo won the fight. Um, or I should say Mighty Mouse didn't. It was just kind of one of those things where it was so close, but you felt like the takedowns, the crowd, like I said, got into it about midway through the fight, realizing that the upset was there. And I think by the end of the fifth round, I would say in my estimation, 75-80% of the crowd was in the opinion that Cejudo had won the fight. And I don't think they even reacted very well when it was announced as a split decision and one of the judges had given it to Demetrius. So, from my perspective, the right guy won the fight. I've seen a little bit of mixed reactions. I haven't seen usually I'll see a media scorecard where it'll have all the media outlets and their scoring, but I felt like at least two of the three judges got it right. I think it was 3 rounds to 2, and it was pretty cool to see a new champion get crowned, and um, kind of a shakeup in a division that for me was a little bit stale.
Yeah, I mean, I liked having Mighty Mouse dominate his division, but the fight was good enough. Like, I knew things were going Cejudo's way when he did that takedown, and then he just kind of did a mount and held on to him. Even Mighty Mouse said he didn't really try to advance his position. He kind of just held him and held on to him really strong just to stay there. And another issue was like the way leg kicks were scored, because I think if you look at the stats, the significant strikes landed were in Johnson's favor, or at least the leg kicks were. Like I forget what the number was. I should have wrote it down when I made my notes. But anyway, so like that's one of the arguments that people were trying to make in favor of Mighty Mouse. But the thing is, like I find with a lot of MMA judges, they don't count they're not going to count strikes if you take someone down. Like, for them to see someone on top of someone, especially like for an extended period of time or at the end of a round, they tend to favor that person on top. And a lot of these judges aren't. It's not like they're former fighters. They're like boxing judges that are scoring. You know what I mean? Like, they're not very well versed in it. So either way, I think they definitely need to run it back. Obviously, Mighty Mouse said he's got a broken foot and some ligament damage in his right leg. Um, so we won't see a rematch soon. And Cejudo's called out the winner of the main event, whoever won it, before, obviously, because their fight was first, so he didn't know who was going to win. But I don't know, man. I mean, I would definitely want to see Cejudo Johnson 3 before I see him take on any other another champ versus champ in the little guy division.
Yeah, well, I mean, if Johnson's hurt and out for time, and Cejudo didn't get injured in the fight and he wants to keep competing, I'm all for him fighting again, whether it's a Sergio Pettis or a Benavides. I'd have to look at the rankings to think exactly who it would be. I don't think that a fight with him and as it turns out in the main event, TJ Dillashaw wins, but I don't think a fight with between those two really sells. Like, uh, I think the UFC expected Mighty Mouse and wanted TJ to win, and I think that
Mm,
was. I really deep down think that was supposed to be the main event for New York.
yeah.
When Dana was asked at the press conference, he said that he was waiting for a fight to slide into that spot, and I kind of took that as, okay, we got to see what happens tomorrow night.
Mm,
Um, so I think that was the plan. I think Mighty Mouse was going to call out TJ, and I think that was going to be the main event. That's why I don't think we haven't seen anything announced yet. I think they were kind of thrown off by what they're going to do now. I don't think Cejudo and TJ is a big enough fight to headline uh, Madison Square Garden. Uh, Although it would be a good fight, it's just not one that I think the UFC will do. I don't think
I,
they'll
my
give Cejudo that
I
fight.
don't know if it has anything to do with the legal stuff that happened in New York between Habib and Connor, but to me, I find it really weird that they're not that they're at the event the month before they come to Madison Square Garden, and they haven't called the main event yet. It's like, are you waiting for something to go wrong to slide a guy to the next month? Like, it's just weird to me that I mean, we're in August now. That's October and November we're looking at for 229, 230 with Diaz, Poirier, and then I'm sorry, Khabib and Connor and Diaz. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, why haven't you? I feel like they're going to shuffle something. So I feel like something's going to happen. Something's going to get shuffled around.
Well, the tickets go on sale next week for the event in Vegas on October 6th.
Yeah,
And
but
we've seen the card get announced so far. The co-main event is Volkov against Lewis. The price of those tickets is going to be high. I don't know if it'll be astronomical. I don't know with the market right now for UFC, but there's gonna, to get in the door is going to be a couple $100 for that event. I don't think that they're going to be able to sell, you know, $1,000, $1,500 tickets for that show, and then move that fight, because there's not another fight that they can put in to replace that. That would be a real, and plus now that it's announced the main event, the fans would probably bail on that. My theory, and I've been telling people for the last couple months, since Connor's issues, or well, since this fight became heavily rumored between him and Khabib, is that the UFC is going to do it in Nevada because they run Nevada. They don't control what can happen in New York.
Yeah.
If Khabib misses weight, if Connor gets arrested the night before the show in Nevada, Dana,
Yeah.
I feel like they can kind of strong arm Nevada to go, no, the fight's still happening. Connor's not going to jail for the night of the, you know what I mean? They
Yeah.
don't, they run the town. There's,
Yeah.
and whereas in New York, I think that New York will just tell him to go jump in a lake, especially if they hold any kind of grudge against Connor. If something were to happen that, plus with the issues of fights getting canceled in New York, I don't think that they want to even risk, you know, if Khabib misses weight by 3 pounds, even if it becomes a non-title fight, that fight's got to go down at this point. You can't
Mm.
have New York step in and say no, he's 158. We're not going to allow the fight to happen. And I think
What about I mean, doesn't I might be wrong, you probably remember better than I do, but doesn't Khabib have a track record of having like weight cutting issues when they do stuff in Vegas? Like, doesn't he didn't
he did. He had one when he fought when he was supposed to fight Ferguson, like the third time. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean he's had his issues. Yeah, it hasn't been an issue the last couple fights. I don't,
That's what I'm
you know.
saying. I think it matters where he fights with those issues because I feel like more of them were on your coast versus mine. I don't know if it's because
Well,
we're
yeah.
colder and he likes the cold and his Dagestani. You know what I mean? Like, I
Well,
don't know.
he had a couple of them were injuries. Though he had to pull out from I think the first Tony fight for a fight that was scheduled. It was somewhere in Florida. I want to say Orlando,
Oh,
for
okay.
fight night. So that's when he blew out his knee the first time. So I think he's maybe had issues with weight once or twice. Obviously that fight with Tony got canceled so many times back and forth. You kind of forget who was responsible
Yeah.
or who was the issue. But um, I you got to believe with the money involved in this fight that Khabib is going to be determined to make weight. Um, he can't afford to have the fight fall through. If the fight falls through and he gets pulled and they, you know, move somebody into that spot, if and he loses out on that payday, it would be a catastrophe for him. If he's, rumor is he's looking at somewhere probably around $10 million. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't think that'll be an issue. I just think that the UFC kind of can control Nevada. They can get Connor and Khabib there a few days earlier and know that they're in their town, and you know I don't want to say protect them, but they kind of can from maybe some of the stuff that New York wouldn't be so lenient with. So I don't know. The card for New York seems loaded right now. We got all the middleweights. They announced the Poirier Diaz fight, although neither guy. I don't even know if the fight's actually signed yet. But that seems to be happening. I don't know what they're going to do for the main event. I know Anderson Silva comes off of his suspension the following week. Because I was always thinking maybe GSP Anderson Silva would be a fight, even though not a non-title fight would be a fight that could sell and would be
Yeah.
one that people would watch. And then, like I said, I thought it was supposed to be Mighty Mouse and TJ. Um, so that I don't know. I don't. They already have a co-main event, so I don't think they're going to do two title fights. I thought maybe at this point you could do Marias and TJ and maybe Cejudo and somebody, or throw Rose in there against somebody and do a double title fight to kind of just make it a real deep card as opposed to just a huge fight. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see because that's going to have to come out in the next, I'd say, 2 weeks or so, because those tickets are going to go on sale probably in the next, I would guess, 3 to 4 weeks. By the end of August, I'd expect those tickets to be going, and they have to announce the main event to sell the event.
What do you think about I mean, obviously we kind of jumped ahead, but without talking about the main event from 227, the Garbrandt and Dillashaw. I mean, we both had Dillashaw picked to win, but I mean, do you think it's worth Do you think? Do you think we see Cejudo Dillashaw before we see Cejudo Johnson 3?
No, no, no. So no, I don't think so. So we get into that fight. Crowd again was energetic. We just had the upset of Cejudo over Mighty Mouse. Um, Crowd was heavily Garbrandt. Um, there was TJ fans. I was one of the probably the louder TJ fans there. I was pretty fired up at that point and looking forward to the fight. Uh, I mentioned I think I thought it might come out a little slow. Guys might be gun shy because they each hurt each other. That was kind of how it went for about the first 90 seconds of the fight. They kind of danced around, not a lot of action, and then Cody hurt TJ with a punch. And similar to the first fight, Cody just kind of goes for it. He goes for the kill, but he opens himself up, and TJ countered and dropped him, and from that point on, pretty much just beat him down and until
Yeah,
the ref had to stop it towards the end of the first round.
yeah, and I think that closes the whole Dillashaw and Garbrandt rivalry. I mean, that's 2 out of 3 already. That's like video game rules. You're done. Like, move on. You
Yeah,
know?
I mean uh, it was a fight that was kind of obviously fun to see, and two guys who were going to bring it to the cage, but it just seems stupid to me to have these instant rematches. I think it ruins guys' careers when the guy loses two in a row when you're so young and you're in a division where I don't know. Cody's not big enough, I don't think, to go up to 155. I don't think he'd be very competitive in that against some of the might be some good fights, but I mean he basically needs TJ to lose now. Um, Either that or he has to win about 8 fights in a row because he's going to find himself where there's just all the other guys are going to be coming up and they're not going to give him a third fight after getting knocked out, twice. The situation might be a little different from Mighty Mouse, uh, but not necessarily. I mean, I guess he could go up in weight, but if he were to fight Henry again and let's say he loses again, um, where does that leave Mighty Mouse? I mean, to me, I don't, you know, I realize that the UFC has made the championship belts kind of the main thing, even though they have their interims and stuff. They become so focused and
Yeah,
they get so much more in Reebok money and they get pay-per-view revenue, um, that guys have to call for that instant rematch. Um, in a perfect world, I'd like to see Cejudo defend against one or two other guys, have Mighty Mouse go beat a couple guys, maybe go up to 135, have a rematch with Cruz, try to get a win there, just kind of reestablish and then get that title shot again after kind of getting a couple more wins and getting the crowd back behind you. And it's different because he defended so many times, but a guy like Cody Garbrandt, I don't know where his career goes from here. I mean, I'm hearing people call for the like to see him fight like John Lineker and stuff like that. I mean, that would be a great fight, but that could be 3 knockouts in a row potentially for Cody, and then at that point you have a guy who's I'd have to think about his exact age, but I think he's in his late 20s. He You all of a sudden would have a guy whose career is basically, I don't want to say over, but pretty damn close. If you suffer 3 knockout losses in a row,
yeah.
two to the champ,
I don't think
you
so.
know.
I mean, when you're that young and that driven, I mean, considering where he trains and stuff, I don't think that should be an issue for him. Especially, I mean, if he's having mobility issues because of what happened with his back, or hesitancy or something like that, I would think they have something at the UFC Performance Institute to rectify whatever's making him as hesitant as he seemed, with his fights or working on his angles. I mean, he's young enough to. Everybody's changing camps now to open up their games and stuff. I mean, look at Mike Perry and Cowboy Cerrone. They used to train together. Now they're fighting each other, and Perry's training between Jackson Wink and still with his camp in Florida. So I think that his career is he's got some time left to make some changes and do some things to keep him in his name popular.
Yeah, well, he's a popular fighter, and
Yeah.
I'm saying if he loses his next fight, there's not many guys who bounce back from 3 knockouts in a row. So right now he's at two. I wouldn't put him in there with a big puncher. I think a Sun Sal or somebody who might test other, or another fight with Cruz, kind of number one, not a number one contender fight because Cody's got to fall behind a Sun Sao and at least Marlon Moraes at this point. Um, Cruz coming off a loss to Garbrandt. I don't, it'd be fun to play matchmaker. That division's really kind of stacked towards the top, and there's a lot of
Yeah,
good potential matchups. But
yeah,
I think TJ really established himself as one of the great featherweights of all time. He's fun to watch, and kind of came out of nowhere out of the Ultimate Fighter show. I mean, he's a guy who got that chance against Burrell at UFC 170 as a late last minute replacement fight, and really hasn't looked back since then.
yeah,
A lot of people thought that he won the Cruz fight. It was a close decision, but I mean, the guy has established himself as a killer who's fun to watch, finishes fights, and uh, he's kind of one of those guys where you either love him or hate him, and he attracts eyeballs. So
yeah.
I don't know how the views did, but with that fight, the event wrapped up really good. Turned out, kind of turned out to be a WEC card with only 185 pound
Light
fight, but
light dudes, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of how it turned out, and there was a run of decisions in the middle, but for the most part, the card was fun, and walking out of the event, there wasn't everybody was other than the Cody fans but I don't think anybody felt like they didn't get their money's worth. I know me and my group of friends all walked out of there with a big smiles on our face, and we had a great time, so it was a successful event.
Yeah, well, I mean, it definitely was better than folks were trying to kind of knock the card before it started. But either way, I mean, I like I said, I caught the main card. I watched all those fights. I caught the other fights, after the fact because I had recorded them, and I was pleased with it. I mean, I think it was pretty decent overall. But obviously, there's nothing going on this weekend coming up, but news with Bellator's welterweight Grand Prix. I mean, there's some names in that thing that I honestly don't know. Like the way we looked at the heavyweight tournament, I honestly don't know like how to call this one because there's so many good welterweights in the tournament. I don't know who do you like off the bat.
Well, real quick, although it's one of their weaker cards, name wise, it is Risen weekend. So anybody on Fight TV, Risen is on Saturday night at 11 o'clock Pacific time.
What is
So
that? I don't know what Fight TV is. What is that?
I don't know. I think we might have to go break some legs for that $8.
Yeah.
But
But
I'll leave that to New York stuff. But
yeah.
yeah, no, Bellator announced their welterweight Grand Prix brackets. We had already heard Douglas Lima and Andres Korshkov is fighting September 29th. That's a fight that probably could be a final.
Mhm.
Probably two of the top three welterweights in Bellator. Um, the winner of that faces off now against Paul Daly and MVP. Kind of on that side of the bracket, I really like Lima, but Korshkov I think might be the up and coming killer in that division.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
he's been a killer.
yeah, he
Yeah.
has been, but I feel like now with this tournament and all the names, he has a chance to really break out. His losses are he got laid on by Askren. Uh, Shoot, what 5-6 years ago now?
Yeah.
Kind of when he was young and upcoming in a title fight, and then he's split fights with Lima. So this is the third fight between the two of them.
And am I to understand because I actually didn't read the full I have it I should have opened it up before we started, but so Rory's putting his belt up for grabs during this thing too?
Yeah, from what I understand, every fight is going to be a 5-round fight. So
Oh
even
wow.
Rory's belt will go on the line. He's scheduled to fight John Fitch. It's not scheduled yet, but that's who his opponent will be. So
Yeah.
that'll be technically be a title fight, and then the winner of that fight will fight the winner of Neiman Gracie and Ed Ruth, and
I
that'll be a
like I
title.
like that fight a lot actually.
Yeah, and then that'll be another title fight. So it's just going to be a title fight all the way down the line, which is really cool. I was concerned initially about Rory being in it because I was worried about divisions getting held up. But if that's really the way to do it, um,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree
and
100%. I mean, the thing with Neiman just re-signed with Bellator, and he was calling for top of the food chain and stuff. So not surprised that they threw him in this. And then Ed Ruth they named that when they did the initial announcement for DAZN. I keep wanting to say Days, and I don't know why. But when they did their announcement at DAZN at the thing they did back in June here in New York, I Ed Ruth was one of the first names Scott Coker mentioned for the tournament before they started calling out they made the full bracket announcement. So I feel like that's the most unpredictable one because I mean this is obviously Ed Ruth's biggest challenge, and Neiman Gracie's undefeated, and I mean that he's humble. He's kind of like I want to say he's like the Brian Ortega of Bellator. He's not doesn't talk a lot of trash. He's like a positive guy, really respectful, but brings it to every match that he fights in. So I'm really excited for that fight. I know it's not scheduled yet either, but I really like what they're doing. It's a DAZN exclusive, so I don't know. I mean they're making it really hard for me not to spend my $10 a month. You know what I
Yeah, I
mean?
mean, you can't really. This is one of the if this tournament holds up, this is one of the most loaded Grand Prix tournaments that the sport's ever seen. Um, Especially at welterweight. I know we had one. Pride had one that was pretty stacked as well. I think it was a 16-man tournament. But for Bellator, the number two organization in the world, to put this many big names in a bracketed of tournament is pretty damn awesome, and really deserves all the fans' support to see how this turns out. Um, I don't know. A lot of the fights just look interesting. I mean, you even talk about Rory and Fitch. I mean, most people would say Rory's going to destroy Fitch, but not a lot of people in this world have destroyed Fitch. You
Yeah,
know,
and the biggest complaint about Fitch is just that they don't find him entertaining, and that's usually from the armchair fighter opinion makers or whatever you want to call them. I mean, if it's what works, it's what works. Ben Askren's been called boring too, and he's retired undefeated. So I actually think that could be. I mean, Rory's tough, but I honestly feel like he's going to give Rory a run for his money, given his experience and his grappling pedigree and the strength and pressure he brings to the game. The only thing, I mean, obviously he's older, and when he fought at the final World Series of Fighting New Year's Eve event, 2016, at the Garden, he said he was contemplating retirement back then based on some medical issues. Obviously, those are cleared because he came back to fight when they did the thing in Daytona under the Pro Fight League, and then now he's with Bellator. So he looks like he wants to. You don't jump in a tournament to just fight once and bounce. So it looks like he's trying to. I don't know if this is his last run at a title or what, but I don't think. I mean, I don't think he's going to lay down for Rory either. That's an interesting fight.
no, I mean, most of the people that have finished Fitch, it seems like if it were standing, um, it didn't. I think Johnny Hendricks knocked him out, or was it Jake Ellenberger? I get a little bit thrown off by that. But yeah, it seems like a good fight to me. And the Rory we have today might not be the same Rory when that fight goes down. He's got to fight Gegard Musashi on September 29th, a bigger middleweight.
Yeah.
Um, things change in this sport, and if he takes a beating from Gegard, it might, you never know. It could be a step slower Rory. It could be he's obviously been in several wars in his career and always bounced back, but there always comes a time where you won too many fights and you take a step down and you're not that elite killer that you were the day before. So I mean, you never know. You never know how that's going to unfold. Um, and then you got Paul Daly and MVP. You know, I Semtex is one of my favorite fighters of all time. I love watching the guy. You know, his finishes, his you know some of his antics are not always great, and I know he's not hard to work with some of the promotions behind the scenes. But as a fan, I love watching the guy. uh, I don't know how that fight's going to work out. We haven't seen MVP really fight anybody above the level of David Rickles yet. Well, he fought Fernando Gonzalez, but that fight was a dud, so that wasn't really something that was easy to judge any kind of where he was at necessarily. Um, but if you put a gun to my head, I'm saying Korshkov, MVP, Rory McDonald, and Ed Ruth are the four that advanced to the second round.
You think Ed Ruth's going to get past Neiman Gracie? Interesting.
In a 3 round fight, I would say for sure. In a 5 round fight, maybe not. I just we Neiman hasn't showed a lot of striking. Mainly, it's been submissions, and Ruth. I just think about the history of the sport, and if you have a good wrestler who's able to kind of negate the ground game of the jiu-jitsu guy, I just and that's kind of what where he's been. He's shown some striking, so I don't know. I just feel like the wrestler in that one might be able to avoid the submissions, but in a 5 round fight, he might get tired, and at that point, then you open yourself up to a lot of stuff. So
Yeah, I
in
mean, for tournaments, it's obviously anybody that comes from wrestling in any kind of tournament format. It's easy to favor them to make it to advance or make it to at least the finals or the next round. But yeah, I mean, I see where you come from with that. But obviously, it might be my own bias, like the way you are with your Fedor sweater and stuff. Like me as a jiu-jitsu guy, and I've interviewed Neiman. I don't know how many times. It's on our YouTube channel. You can see them there. And he's obviously a Henzino guy from New York, trains in New York under Henzo. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little biased in my pick for him, but I think Neiman's going to make a serious run to win this tournament.
Well, I mean, I'm rooting for him. Let's not. I'm just looking at how I kind of see it unfolding. In a perfect world, I'd like to see Gracie win the tournament. The guy's undefeated, and seeing Gracie at the end of an 8-man tournament would be pretty nostalgic. And I'm a huge fan of Henzo. Speaking of Henzo, he's coming off of a victory at 51 years old. He fought at ONE FC a couple weeks ago. I woke up about 5 in the morning to start watching his fights. So he finished off Yuki Kondo, another veteran and former UFC title contender. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to see Gracie win the tournament. I have a feeling if you were to win that fight with Ruth, you run into if you run into Rory or Fitch again, you got wrestlers. So it could become an interesting scenario where you start to see how good his jiu-jitsu game is in the against elite MMA competition.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you. I mean, I understand it, but yeah, I I just this is the first tournament because I know when we talked about it a few times in another previous episode. We talked about the heavyweight tournament. This is the one that's hardest for me to pick somebody that I think can make it to the end. You know, like when we were looking at the heavyweight tournament, obviously we were all talking about Ryan Bader, and here's Ryan Bader as one of the finalists. So it's kind of like this isn't as easy to call because they're all guys that they're not very old. Like maybe Fitch is the oldest guy in the tournament, right?
Yeah, by far. Everybody else is pretty much in their prime, and Fitch is
Yeah,
on a nice roll himself. So it's not as if he's washed up by any means. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean it's loaded. Looking at it, if I was picking my final today, I would have Korshkov and McDonald. I think that those
That'd be a
two,
great fight right there. That's just
you know,
even outside the tournament, if they book that at some point afterwards, that'd be a great fight.
yeah, no, I think that that's the fight. I mean, Korshkov and MVP has potential just to be epic levels. I mean, Korshkov's coming off a spinning back kick liver shot knockout or finish of a guy in Rome. Um,
Oh yeah, he lifted that guy in the air. I remember
yeah, he
that.
sent
Yeah,
him flying across the ring, and him and MVP could be spectacular. Um, Basically, you have a bunch of strikers on one side, and you have a bunch of grapplers on the other side of the bracket. So
yeah, that's
kind of
right.
kind of sets up nicely for an old school kind of striker versus grappler final, and I'm pretty stoked on it.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like when I got that, I got the thing. I tweeted out the brackets or whatever. I need to reread the details on it and stuff. But I mean, just looking at the bracket, I'm super excited for it. I'm just like I mean, I could have swore that in the initial Viacom thing when they announced the zone agreement that they said things were going to be simultaneously on Paramount, but now I'm seeing it advertised. This tournament advertises it as a the zone exclusive. So I'm just like, damn it! I think I'm gonna have to fork over this $10 at least for this tournament.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that too. I'm a little bit still not sure exactly how this are all the events on DAZN. If even if they're on Paramount, are they on DAZN? Because
So
I
if
I pay an extra couple bucks to get Paramount on my TV system.
Yeah.
So I'd happily cancel that or delete that off my thing to save $5 and then throw that towards this to, because I basically only pay for that to get Bellator. So I don't know. It's a little bit up in the air. I still don't think they're going to get a lot of viewers, which is kind of scary
I
to me. But
yeah, I still hope. I mean, like I said, we talked about this last time or one or two episodes ago. I hope the Zone becomes their version of Fight Pass, and they start picking up other things to, and just keep it like the same price. Make my $10, like the way the Fight Pass is with everything I see. I mean, I tried to when I spoke with James Russian, the CEO of the Zone. I threw the idea at him, and he mentioned the social listening thing. So I think the more noise we make on social media to add more content, the more they'll do it. And what we can see stuff like the thing you were asking about on Twitter the other day. What's your buddy's the one in the fall? There's some submission grappling thing going on out by you.
oh yeah, there's another event that somebody contacted me about being a part of, and it's going to be a team submission
Yeah.
uh, grappling event in Anaheim, California. So I'll have more information on that in the next couple weeks for the shows.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
ticket information for anybody in Southern California, and um, try to figure out how to maybe do a show from there if we can free up the schedule. And uh,
Yeah.
it's an all day thing on a Saturday, so
Oh, nice.
maybe we can do a live hour or something.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, I'm down to do that.
Yeah, so yeah,
Uh,
it's definitely picking up this. Usually summer's the hot time for MMA in the MMA world, and it's been a great summer. But
yeah.
we be with between the Bellator kicking off in
Well,
September, late September, and then October we got Connor and Khabib, and then November we got MSG UFC, and just seems like
yeah.
the fall this year might be the
Yeah.
time when it
Pro
blows up.
Pro Fight League is I don't know if you saw the news. I wrote an article for over at MMA News about it. They just got $28 million investment. Kevin Hart, Tony Robbins, and Mark Burnett are invested in Pro Fight League. They got their event next week in Atlantic City. I may or may not be at that. Obviously, I still got stuff at home I got to take care of with my family. So depending on how that pans out, I may or may not be there. But either way, they're definitely worth following. They got new money to carry on another season. So, and there might be their version of they're going to call it Challenger Series from what they're playing with. Mark Burnett's going to produce it so now they'll be adding to their roster for people to get in their season format, and everyone's going to get a chance to win the same money. I think that's awesome, like rags to riches fight story that people should keep an eye on. So yeah, no, definitely good time for the sport to be growing, man. So speaking of growing, if folks want to help this podcast grow, we just added listener support. Anchor hooked it up that if you want to help support this podcast, I mean, for as little as 99 cents, you can do it. Whether you listen through Anchor or iTunes, you'll see listener support. You can tap that and sign up to help out with our growth, and you can help us get more swag out to that we send out to fighters and stuff. The T-shirt that you see Matt and Saad Awad and all those guys. I got Nolan Kings and stuff that I got to give him that all our podcast guests wear. So we'll use it for that. But so if you guys like what you're hearing and you want more, by all means, click support if you see the tab.
All right, Ed. Well, it's been a good talking. It was a fun, exciting weekend. I hope things continue to uh, get better on your end over there on the East Coast, and we look forward to getting some live guests on. It's been harder to schedule here with kind of our
Yeah,
schedules lately, but I appreciate everybody who keeps listening and supporting the show and retweets us on Twitter and comments about us on the MMAcommunity.com, and people who have bought T-shirts. And it's been fun doing this, and we're not going anywhere. We're just we hit a few bumps in the road in the last month that needed to be taken care of, and we're here for the long haul, though.
yeah, definitely. We're not going anywhere. And next week we'll be back on Tuesday nights for people that like watching the live version of this. And if you can't catch it live, obviously we're on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, Podbean, anywhere podcasts are played, you can find us.
You can check us out at Combat Hour on Twitter. myself at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram, and you can follow Ed on Twitter at Carbazol. Ed, good talk. Look forward to talking to you again next week. Maybe go over some of the Risen stuff, and just look forward to the James Vick and Justin Gaethje fight at Fight Night Nebraska for UFC.
Cool, man. Thanks. Uh, make sure you sleep with a fire extinguisher out there.
Yeah, I'll survive, but yeah, thoughts and prayers to anybody
Man,
who's dealing with all that chaos going on a little bit north of me.
absolutely.